Congratulations, you're a trillionaire, not a millionaire, not a billionaire. A trillionaire, $1 trillion. A 1 with 12 zeros behind it. If you spent $1 million every single day, $1 million gone every morning, it would take you 2,040 years to run out. The Roman Empire didn't last that long. But there's a problem. Nobody teaches you what $1 trillion is for, and the numbers stop making sense. Your money, sitting in the most boring investment on Earth, earns $110 million a day. In interest, while you sleep, while you blink. You cannot spend it faster than it grows. Nobody can. $1 trillion is bigger than the entire economy of Switzerland. You, one person, one signature, out-earn 160 countries. So you start where everyone starts. The house, not a house. The house. A $250 million estate in the hills above Los Angeles. 38 bedrooms, a spa, a theater, a garage built for 40 cars, a kitchen with 6 ovens, none of which you know how to turn on. And here's what that number means to you. $250 million. To a trillionaire is what a $25 dinner is to someone making $100,000 a year. You don't look at the price. You look at the weather. For 11 days, it's perfect. Then it's a Tuesday. You're standing in a kitchen the size of an airport lounge, and you realize you haven't opened the East Wing. You don't know what's in there. You bought it anyway. Nope, not enough. Not even close. So, the jet. A Gulfstream G700. $78 million. To you, that's someone on a $100,000 salary buying a $78 used car. Walnut, leather, a bed at 51,000 feet. You fly to Tokyo because you want sushi. You're home by midnight, but the jet needs a crew. The crew needs a hangar. The hangar needs staff. And one morning, you realize you've accidentally built a small airline just so you can get sushi on a Tuesday. Nope, not enough. The yacht, then. 400 feet. $600 million. A crew of 47. 2 helicopters. A submarine garage. Because the yacht anchored next to yours in Monaco has one. And that cannot stand. $600 million to you is what a $600 vacation is to a normal person. A rounding error on a rounding error. You sail for 3 weeks. The Mediterranean is yours. The entire sea. And on day 19, you're sitting alone on a ship staffed by 47 people. And the water is very blue and very, very quiet. Not even close. So you stop buying things. You start buying places. Not a house on an island. Not the island. The entire archipelago. 17 islands in the South Pacific. $2.1 billion, which, to you, is someone on a $100,000 salary buying a nice jacket. That's all it is. A jacket. You buy a football team. Then the stadium. Then, one night, you catch yourself reading about the league. Because the league is in reach. You fly 400 guests to your archipelago for a birthday. Fireworks. A famous singer. You spend most of the party talking to the event planner. She's the only one who isn't trying to enjoy you. You book an entire restaurant just to eat in peace. You rent a museum for a morning just to stand in front of one painting without a stranger's shoulder touching yours. It works. It's silent. It's the most expensive silence on Earth. And here is the warning that comes printed nowhere. When everything is affordable, nothing is. A price tag is a question. Can I? Should I? Is it worth it? You have deleted the question. And without the question, nothing you buy answers anything. But you want coffee. Just coffee. The place you used to go. Cracked leather seats. A barista who's known your order for 6 years. $4 a cup. It used to be the best 10 minutes of your Tuesday. Your security team doesn't love it. They arrive 20 minutes early. 2 men by the door. A car idling outside. The other customers notice. A phone comes up, then another. The barista doesn't know where to look anymore. On the house, she says. Her hands shake a little when she sets the cup down. You drink the coffee. It tastes exactly the same, but everything around it is different. So, you stop going there. That's the first thing you lose. It won't be the last. Your best friend. 19 years. Pool every Thursday since you were 22. $40 buy-in. He once threw his cue across the room over a $7 game. Now he comes to the estate, and he can't stop looking at the ceiling. He laughs at jokes that aren't funny. You test it. You tell a joke with no punchline. He laughs anyway. You watch him do it. He lets you win at pool. This man, who once flipped a table over $7, misses the 8 ball like it's nothing. You offer to pay for dinner. He says sure too fast. And something small and old dies right there at the table. The group chat used to be 9 years of memes and arguments about nothing. Now the replies come slower. Ha! Then a thumbs up. Then nothing. You would give him $10 million without blinking. What you can't give him back is the argument. You miss being argued with. He gets married in the spring. You give the toast. It's a good toast. The whole room laughs, and you catch yourself scanning their faces, checking which laughs are real. You learned that from him. From what he became. Another friend just stops texting. No fight. No reason. Months later, you find out why. He couldn't figure out how to split a check with you anymore, so he split himself out of your life instead. Then you meet her. A bookstore, of all places. She doesn't recognize you. That's the whole thing, at first. You tell her you work in finance. You wear the cheap watch on purpose. You take her to a diner with $9 pancakes, and she steals the last bite off your plate. And nobody has done that in years. For months. It's wonderful. Then a magazine prints your face. She says, it doesn't matter, and that's exactly when it starts to matter. Everything after that becomes a question you cannot stop asking. She laughs at your story. Does she like you, or does she like this? You buy her something small. She loves it. You buy her something big. She loves that too. Both answers prove both theories. Once, she insists on paying. A $60 dinner. She fights you for the check like it's a sport, and it feels like the most expensive gift you've ever received, because it might be the only thing in your life that cost anyone anything. You never tell her that. You ask her what she'd do if you lost it all. She says exactly the right thing. That's the problem. It's exactly the right thing. You rehearse a conversation in the shower, the one where you finally ask her directly. You never have it. You already know she'd say exactly the right thing again. You will never know. Nobody warns you about this part. Not that people will want your money, that you will never again be able to tell the difference between love and arithmetic. One night, 11:47 p.m., you send her a text. 3 sentences. You rewrite it 4 times. She reads it. She doesn't respond. Your mom calls every Sunday. She always has. She tells you about the tomatoes. The birds at the feeder, a new one this week. Yellow. She doesn't know the name. The neighbor's dog got out again. Normal things. Small things. Perfect things. So you pay off her house. $184,000. You don't even notice it leave. You send a car. You send a driver. You send a check with so many zeros that she calls you, alarmed, and for the first time in your life, your mother sounds nervous talking to you. The calls get shorter. Sundays become every other Sunday. She asks if you're eating now, the way you'd ask a stranger. You can't unsend the money. Your dad doesn't call about money. He never has. He doesn't call much at all now. Last time, he asked about your plane, not you. The plane. At Christmas, you renovate the house. Her house. New kitchen, new roof, heated floors. You visit for the first time in a year, and your childhood bedroom is an office now. The wall where your height was marked in pencil, every birthday, painted over. It's lovely, she says, the way you'd describe a hotel. Your brother calls with a business idea. He needs $2 million. You send it before he finishes the sentence. He calls you a lifesaver, then he stops calling. Because now every conversation has a number attached to it, and he knows it. And you know it. You bought him a future. It cost him a brother. He'd never say that. Neither would you. And then there's the world outside the gates. 17 lawsuits in 6 months. A man you've never met claims you ruined his life. A woman sues you over a handshake from 2019. Your legal budget is $40 million a year. That's simply the cost of being worth the trouble. 12 security operators rotate through the property in shifts. $9 million a year. There's a binder in a safe, somewhere, with routes mapped for your children's school runs. You don't have children. The binder exists anyway. A car sits outside your gate for 4 hours on a Tuesday. A delivery driver arrives who isn't a delivery driver. Your mail passes through 3 people before it reaches you. Your food passes through too. Everyone around you is background checked. You know the florist's credit score. She doesn't know you know. You've stopped learning the new guards' names. It's easier that way. You used to walk to the store at midnight for ice cream. Now you send someone. Then you stop sending anyone. Paranoia is just math you can't stop doing. The house has a theater, 40 seats, red velvet, a projector that cost more than your first apartment. You watch a movie in it, alone. The acoustics are perfect. The sound has nowhere to land. The dining room seats 30. Table is set for 1. The chef, a man who has cooked for 2. Presidents, asks what you want for dinner. You stand in a kitchen with 6 ovens, and you don't know. You genuinely don't know. It's 3 a.m. before you answer. And the answer is cereal, eaten standing up, straight from the box. At night, you walk. The hallways are long enough that your watch counts it as exercise. The security cameras follow you, small red eyes turning in the dark. You stop, it stops. You move, it follows. It is the only thing in the house that notices when you move. You pass the staff corridor. 63 people work here. Housekeepers, groundskeepers, operators, the florist who comes on Mondays. They are polite. They are professional. They go home at night. There's a pool nobody swims in. A library nobody reads in. 19 guest rooms, made up every week, for guests who never come. Deliveries arrive for things you don't remember ordering. 41 unopened boxes in the east hallway. Last count, at 3 a.m. the house hums. Servers, climate systems, cameras. It's the sound of money keeping itself alive. On New Year's Eve, the staff sets off fireworks over the water. You watch from the balcony. 12 operators watch the perimeter. Everyone is looking at the same sky. Nobody is standing next to you. And then there's the roof. You go up there sometimes. The way you used to, back in the old apartment, the one above the laundromat. A folding chair, a $6 beer. You still have the folding chair. Nobody knows why you kept it. You do. The sky is the same sky. Same constellations. Same moon, doing its same slow work over the hills. The stars haven't moved. Everything underneath them has. And that's where it ends. Not with a crash, not with a scandal. Just a man on a roof in a $6 chair. On top of a $250 million house, looking at the one view in his life that money couldn't change. 63 people work here. You are the only one who lives here.